Welcome back to another episode of this podcast. Today we have David Tian, the founder of State of Banana.
Yes, hello Simon.
And of course Lyra.
Hi.
Now David, I want to start with you because you studied in China before, right?
Yes.
And in international politics. Now how long were you in China? Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your adventure there.
Adventure, yes, I can use that word, adventure. I stay in China for 1.5 years, and after that, because of pandemic, I go back to Malaysia and complete my degree in Malaysia, of course online lah. So, first I choose to stay in China for further study. That time is 2018. It is because that time actually only 5 years, but these 5 years has happened a lot of things.
Yep.
And that time China is not that aggressive like this. And no pandemic, no MCO, no lockdown. And China, that time is like new emerging power, economic power, something is doing well. And you have a very good not a very good, is many very good university that time. But after studying there and many things happen, it's what China we can see now.
Now it's very interesting because previously we had quite a few discussions because studying politics in China are really very unique, I would say. Lyra, I think you will agree, right? And we always talk about this comparative politics, which has been ongoing. I mean, around the world. I think it's really China. I should say maybe it's the Communist Party trying to come out with these discussions that, hey, democracy is not necessarily a good thing. So they want to present their worldview, I guess, because obviously China is not the democracy, not the universal suffrage type. But they have committee, they have certain people who can vote, the central committee, they just have the recently concluded National Congress. So it's like we're seeing these comparisons, between a closed system and an open system. And I think maybe this is a good time for us just to have a quick look at a recent video which kind of made round around the world. Okay, let's just have a look.
Yeah.
People across China are not happy, and their anger exploded on the streets for several days. From residents fed up with lockdowns in far west China to students at prestigious universities in Beijing. Nearly 3 years into the pandemic, protesters from different walks of life have been pushed to the brink amid strict COVID controls that have hurt livelihoods and stifled the economy. Here's how one of the largest nationwide demonstrations in decades happened in China, and how this fury creates a political dilemma for Xi Jinping's leadership.
Okay, so that's a video just came out, 1 or 2 weeks ago. Now, of course, Malaysia was at general election. I'm not sure if people even talk about it, but it's really, people say it's nothing they have seen since Tiananmen Square. And now, earlier on, I was asking you, there is a saying that whatever we see about China is what is allowed by CCP. So what do you make of this?
For this case, I don't agree with this sentiment because for my information, I have some friends still in China, some Malaysian friends, Chinese friends. It's kind of reaching the boiling point already because if you see the whole cases happening, it starts from Xinjiang, the most sensitive places in China, and start with a fire and people are burning up alive that time. So I think it's not that CCP want to control you, whether they want you to see or not. But if you reach certain boiling point of people will, they are like nothing to lose. I just want to survive. I just want my rights. I just want to live my life as a human being. That's simple. So they came out to protest. Imagine like in a normal day, you protest in Xinjiang is a big deal. But how come they are hundreds of people on the road of Urumqi and hundreds of people in schools in Peking University, even in my university too. You say CCP done all these things, I don't believe so. So I think it's not in their control, but it's like a sudden, but after all, they quickly control things.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we know from the history of China, you know, this kind of spontaneous revolutions, it's nothing new, you know, the cycle has been on, but it's just, I guess the last 20, 30 years with the emerging and the consolidation of CCP, this kind of thing just seems so unthinkable. So is it the authority are losing control?
I think it's more like a black swan situation because we used to think CCP is like they are almighty one in China because history has shown that, and according to the development of China's situation nowadays. But this time, after the party congress and Xi Jinping managed to have his third term, we think the power is solid already. But
Yep.
in the real situation, on the ground, people are suffering for life, suffering to eat. They are starving. They're locked down in the room.
Yep.
And some of them, even they have some sickness, but they cannot go to hospital. It's more like a humanity, this disease, disaster already. So
Yep.
I think as a normal human being, it is your instinct to voice out. Just that only. So just now you say, Chinese government is losing control. I don't think so, but the control or the ruling is still there. The the legalistic of the CCP is still there, but just people, they just live their life. They just want to survive. So
I guess when I say lose control, it's more like they are losing the ability to make people continue to be happy and support them. Yeah, and because like you say, the last 20 years before all this, maybe 10 years, there has been great prosperity, you know, in China. And maybe, Lyra, I'm going to ask you this. What's the sense that you get from the business community? Because so many people have said, after the last National Congress, China will open up because it's just a political ploy. And now Xi Jinping has consolidated his power. It's still locked down.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at like Shanghai, some of those places where business are supposed to be opening up and stuff like that. I mean, even just, I think a couple of months ago that you see like people actually, literally tourists get stuck in Shanghai Disneyland.
During the tour.
I mean, yes, it's probably fun. You can just, be there. But then the thing is, it's really quite unthinkable because after that suffering people think that it's going to be better in 2021. And yet, in Malaysia, just talking about Malaysia, it's just getting worse. Just with the amount of lockdown that we have, and what more in China, where you just have like massive lockdown after lockdown, and then you don't really know, and a lot of investors are just pulling out. So I think the fact that foreign investments are pulling out of China, I think that really shows that there is maybe a sign that CCP is wanting to close the economy. Probably they want to create their own ecosystem, I think. Even with the Russia-Ukraine war, maybe they are like trying to rally like a different world power just to go against America, for instance.
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned this because I think just a couple of days ago, President Xi Jinping was in Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of discussion about how they want to just kind of develop the new petrol currency. You know, can you imagine Saudi, the biggest exporter, China, the biggest importer? Hey, let's just do a direct deal. Why should we use US dollar? And then now you mentioned about closing the border, and David, I want your take on this because we kind of had a bit of chat over dinner, right?
Yeah.
So China can survive on their domestic market. We know that. And even the last couple of years, we have seen them retreating so much, especially from Hollywood, especially from arts and entertainment. You know, they used to pay their celebrities so much, and suddenly you read the news, right? The government was putting a cap on how much the entertainer can earn and things like that. And even the biggest show coming out from China are all the patriotic, all the CCP related. You can just see a shift. If you follow Chinese entertainment, mainland China entertainment, you can see the shift. You know, I used to watch Running Man quite a lot, you know, and I can just feel that sense of freedom being taken away because they want a certain perspective. Now, here's one view, you know, one commentator say that China is trying to destroy the conventional supply chain because all the factories, you talk about Volkswagen, you talk about Tesla, you talk about Apple, all their manufacturing is tied to China, and China say, I'm just going to cut you off, and Western economy are going to suffer. I can still survive on my domestic market, and I'm still buying the most petroleum from Saudi, and it will bypass US dollar. So the view is that they are go on an all-out war with West, and that's why the lockdown continue. What's your take on this?
Your questions, let me think, recall back to what one of my professor have said like 2 years ago. It's like, in Chinese we say 内循环. That time is the beginning of lockdown.
Yeah.
And at first I am thinking of what 内循环 is like. 内循环 is like you do the market inside your country only.
Yeah.
You like sacrifice all the international trade. For us, like now globalism kind of world is like crazy. How can you stop doing business with any other country?
Yep.
But China have that capacity to do that. So in a narrow way, we see like China is like sacrificing all that things just to fulfill some dreams or whatever. But if we look through the history, or we look through these 10 years after the reign of Xi Jinping, actually we can feel that the so-called 中华伟大复兴梦 is like the Chinese culture dreams. He really want to do that. So how can he do? If I recall back to like 2 to 3 years ago, even when I start university, there's many evidence they are doing that. They're restricting. They're actually building up the new kind of order surrounding them, surrounding the system. Because if we talk about Chinese culture, actually it's more exclusive. It's like even whether it's you are with us or you are not with us. That's it. So there's not a gray area for this kind of culture. So after you mentioning that, I'm kind of not only believing. I think we have to prepare and to think about what we need to do. It's like we all doing business. We are all in the market, free market. But why somehow the market become not free? So yeah,
it's very, very interesting you mentioned this, because I think a lot of people are still not waking up to the fact that China is playing their own game now. And I read so many commentators from Singapore, from Taiwan even, and Japan, and say, look, and just basically telling the West and say, don't make us choose between US or China, because we're going to choose China. But now, based on what has been happening, I think the choices are not so clear-cut anymore, because it's like, if you don't want to play according to the rule, how can we even be in the same game? So, but you mentioned about, he wanted to push, the culture, and the culture is different. Now, one of the things that maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, because you study, politics in China, is how they always present themselves as, hey, we are the peaceful one. We never colonize people. They always say that for the longest time. And you say, look at Britain, look at Europe, look at everyone else who colonized. I mean, America didn't really colonize until after World War II, and mainly through all the regime change we see. Now that's another story for another time. But now, all of a sudden, with Belt and Roads, all this kind of thing, and with what's happening, even with the currency war and things like that, it seems like the leadership of China is not even hiding their ambitions anymore. Would you agree?
Yes. In Chinese term, we can separate different era with different president of China. During the Hu Jintao era, it's like we Tao Guang Yang Hui. Tao Guang Yang Hui is like, we don't want to evangelize our communism. We just want to be a good friend with anyone. We want to do business. We want to earn a lot of money. But after 2012, after Xi Jinping, is the ideal change a bit. It's like we want to fulfill our dream. We want to fulfill our ancestor dream. And what is the ancestor dream? They use this kind of word a lot. Actually, if we look back of Chinese culture, or we say 儒家 culture, or we say Qing Han. Qing Han is like actually Qing Han kind of culture shaped this today China. So what is Qing Han culture? It's more like 儒家文化. It's like, if you are not with us,
you're against us.
Yeah, against us. So just now you have mentioned a very interesting thing. It's like China always says US, UK, you are colonial, you are a bad guy.
And we are not.
We are not. Because if you think colonial, this kind of phrase came from Western, came from English or in history. Yes, of course, China didn't colonize anyone. But what is other way? They make other country become a small little brother. Actually, in history, if we look back to history, it's very obvious already. So many countries like Korea and Japan, if they want to avoid themselves from the attacking from the central kingdom, they have to give some present or give some princes to China. That's it. So we say in Chinese word, it's like 道义国际政治. One of the scholar named it. It's like kind of another stream of international politics. How China making friends and friends in international politics. So they have own phrase, they have their own relationship, far more different from Western. Because in the end, the deep rooted base thing between Western culture and Chinese culture is different. Chinese culture, why I say is exclusive, because in the history, the president of the king, they treat themselves as son of God. But in Western, they used to have son of God, so many son of God there. After the war, after the battle, after so many hoo-ha, and they know, human will make mistake. We may embrace democracy idea. We may embrace the ideal of freedom. Why freedom is really important. But in China, that's not.
It's really interesting because of the contrast between China and especially America, because America is really founded on the whole basis that humans are flawed and we need check and balance. And because, if given enough power, anyone can become corrupt. And interesting you talk about that, even though Chinese, they don't use the word colonize, but you have seen how they deal even internally with Mongolia, with Tibet, with Taiwan and Hong Kong, for example. I mean, it's just colonization in another word, but it's a different kind of culture. Now, since we're at this, let's talk a little bit about Hong Kong and Taiwan, because I think that will help us to understand a little bit. And of course, later on, we want to finish off by coming back to Malaysia, because at the end of the day, we want to talk about how this impacts us. You already alluded to the fact that, hey, everyone, we need to wake up. This is happening now. And the dragon is just going to swallow everyone if we don't make a stand. Because, But anyway, let's talk about Hong Kong and Taiwan, because now, of course, we saw the video of the protests, then we know the history of Hong Kong. Now, previously, you did mention before that, look, if you want to protest against the government, you can't do it for too long. I think that was the mistake of the Hong Kong people. And after that, everyone turned against them. Then, of course, after looking at what happened with Hong Kong, Taiwan decided to go to a pro-independence party and president. Now, we're not going to talk too much detail here, but I want to ask a very open-ended question. For the people of China, when it's, you mentioned already, it's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of survival. What is the end game for these people? Is it they just want a better conditions, or are they really fighting for freedom and liberty? Is that even a realistic dream for the people of China?
It's very interesting because every political party, they have their own agenda. They have their own kind of how motivate people. So if you say all the people, they want freedom, they want democracy.
No, I think that's not China. Especially given the fact that they have prospered, But given the last 2 or 3 years, do you feel like maybe there's just that? I mean, people of Hong Kong will say it's different because you grew up with democracy, you grew up with the British system. So Taiwan also different. But if we say, how many people in China really want democracy, maybe not so much. But in terms of just the protest that we are watching, what is their end game?
The end game for me is a marathon. Actually, all this kind of Taiwan separatism, Hong Kong separatism, is all linked with one problem. Is actually Second World War questions, the problem, because there are many who are it's so messed up that time in China.
Yep.
They are dealing what they are dealing with is the 5,000 years of imperialism. So we need a progress. We need a long progress for them to maybe we can step up for a new era. I can say this is a kind of short progress comparing to the long history.
Yep.
Like 60 years, 70 years, 80 years.
That's
According to history, is very, very, very few.
That's communist history, basically. 70, 80 years. So not very long in context of China.
Yeah, exactly. So the end game of them is whether, for me, it's the how to say, the major one. They have to answer the questions whether they believe that democracy or freedom or this kind of humanity value, they agree or not. They agree that with a universal kind of value, or they just think it is not universal. We, China, have the Chinese characteristic or whatever. It's more philosophy kind of questions, but I think they, in the end, they have to answer this kind of question.
Yeah, I think it's a
yes
foundation questions. Yeah.
Yes or no. It's yes, we have to fight. If no, let them be Chinese characteristic. Maybe sometime you have the thing, something you are right. Something the so-called Western is wrong.
I mean, we talk about human rights, we talk about individual expressions, and a lot of these from the West basically come from the Judeo-Christian heritage, which I agree with you, it is not present in China. But of course, if there are enough people who say we want this to be the foundation, then of course the history doesn't really support that.
Yes.
But it's up to the people to really decide and have a discussion. Yeah. But of course now the issue is they don't even have the avenue to even discuss.
Yes.
So it has been a really interesting discussion. So we look forward to more discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for now. Bye bye.
Bye bye.